Welcome back, nonfiction text readers, to day 5 of our unit on text structures. It's important that we ask ourselves questions as we read. So I want to pose you with this question. Why are they so challenging? And we're going to think about this as I explain our text as our content objectives. So, our content objective is that you will be able to use nonfiction text structures to help with your reading. The language objective is that you will be able to write and discuss nonfiction text structures. So, as we think of the question that I posed, which was why are they so challenging? I want you to think about the anchor chart that we saw a couple of days ago, which was how to read nonfiction books well. Think about the steps. There's 6 steps. The first 2 steps we were able to learn and apply with our KWL chart, which was activate prior knowledge, make connections, and anticipate what you'll learn. Then we also figured out what text structures were being used in each passage. Today, I want to tackle step 4, which is tackling the hard parts. What makes a nonfiction book so challenging? I've selected some challenging texts. Sometimes nonfiction texts fool us to make us think they are easier than they are. Today, we will look closely at the challenging texts I chose and investigate what makes them so challenging. I chose 3 texts: Global Warming, Kid Scientist, and Pablo Pineda. Pablo Pineda is different than the other 2 because this text is in Spanish. But I want you to see how text features and text structures transfer from one language to another. So let's look at the first one, which is global warming. As we bring it up, and again, this is a text that I found in Epic, we quickly look at the book and we see that it has a beautiful cover. And a lot of us might be attracted to a book like this or a text like this because of the photos, and we like to learn about animals. So we can quickly look on here and look at the table of contents to give us some idea as we're previewing the book as to what we're in for. Again, step 1, 2. What do I know about the content? What do I want to learn about the content? And then step 3, try to identify what text structure is being used. So I know that this is talking about the weather because it's talking about global warming, so it's our environment. And I can tell that because it's also in the table of contents. There's a glossary, there's an index, there's making an impact. But most importantly, this table of content is also giving us an idea of what the text structure is. Causes of global warming, effects of global warming. So that tells me that this book was organized with the text structure of cause and effect. And as I look through the pages, I see that I have my vocabulary word that's specific to this content highlighted so I can look for it in my glossary. There are beautiful photos and captions for me to see and to read. Also, notice that this book has more of a narrative feel. So, the greenhouse effect, and then it talks about that. And it starts off with the effects and causes, cause and effect. Some of the causes of global warming are burning fossil fuels, deforestation, farming, and then the effects: extreme weather, melting messes, and it goes on. Okay. So, at first glance, we might think that this book is rather easy to read because of the photos and because of the text cover. But it's not until we really get into the text that we can really take it all in and prepare ourselves, making that mind shift turning on that nonfiction filter so we can understand what it is that we're reading. Okay. The next book is the next book that I want to show you. It's called Kid Scientist. Let's take a look at that. So let's look at this. Kid Scientist. Kid Scientist, True Tales of Childhood from Science Superstars. So first of all, I mean, it had a catchy title. It has an introduction. It doesn't have a table of content. So it looks like a regular book would look. And then it goes into more of a nonfiction text features. And then it goes into each person. So this is almost like an autobiography of different scientists. And you can see that it's a narrative text because it's reading like a story, but then there's certain features that would be like a nonfiction text, like these photos or these images with captions in them. And then we go to the next. So at a glance, we might think this is an easier book to read, but it also is going to give us some challenges. Okay. So this is why it's important that we
spend.
Well, and it provides you the word if you don't know what the word means or how to pronounce the word. But it goes into all of these different. So there's a lot of information here. One thing that I've also noticed is that a lot of the content vocabulary is not highlighted. There was no table of content, so that's kind of hard. It does have sections, part 1 and part 2. So that we know that these are having to do with mysteries, natural world, but it doesn't really provide us with much guidance. Okay, let's take a look at the third book. The third book is Pablo Pineda. And again, this book is in Spanish, but I want you to look at the text features. So it reads like a regular book would. It has shorter passages. It has beautiful photographs. So as you can see, it doesn't have a lot of the features of a nonfiction text, but it is a nonfiction text. How do we know that? Because this is it tells us right here. It says, sobre la fundación, lo que de verdad importa. So he founded a foundation. And this is a series of books like this. So let's go back to the beginning and see if we can get some information. This is a nonfiction book that's like an autobiography that talks about Pablo Pineda. Ser diferente es un valor. So here, and I'm going to read a little bit so we can get an idea. Hoy en la escuela la maestra nos contó una historia. Todos estábamos muy atentos porque ese chico, el protagonista, existe en verdad. Y es genial porque tiene capacidades diferentes. Sí, sí, pónganse cómodos y escuchen. Un caluroso día en agosto nació en Málaga el cuarto hijo de la familia Pineda. Lo llamaron Pablo. Transcurrían días felices con el nuevo bebé. Era tierno, alegre y muy tranquilo, pero había algo diferente en la forma de sus ojos. Eran distintos a los de sus hermanos. So again, this is an autobiography that talks about Pablo Pineda. So because it doesn't have a lot of text features, it's hard for us to really comprehend. But again, this is another text that is nonfiction and might be a little challenging because it doesn't provide you with all those other clues as far as what kind of text structure is this written in. Is it in chronological? Does it go from infant to adult? Then we're looking at sequencing as a text structure. All right. All right. So let's go on with our slides here. So, there are a lot of ways nonfiction can be difficult when you're aware of some of the ways you can tackle the difficult texts. Your job is to learn the ways nonfiction texts are challenging, and that's what we were doing. So, why are they so challenging? And I've showed you some different nonfiction texts, but I want you to think about a book that we might be familiar with, like Wonder, which is a narrative text. And then a book like the one our mentor text. Mm, First of all, look at the difference. The first one, we know what we're getting, a story. As long as we read, and if we're having trouble comprehending, we might think of some strategies like rereading, using context clues, decoding. But then we go over to the nonfiction book, and it has a lot of pictures and diagrams, and it keeps our attention keeps shifting. So we have to find ways to organize that. And by understanding that the nonfiction text is going to be different than the regular text, then we know to make that shift. I have made a list of several challenging nonfiction texts. You will choose and examine a text and list the things that make it difficult. So for your asynchronous work, I want you to choose one of these books, and you can find a copy of this slide in Canvas under Nonfiction Challenging Text. Choose one and make a list of why you feel this book is challenging. And then when you come back for your asynchronous time, be ready to share. Good luck.